session. As I just mentioned, we are going to cover two knowledge areas today. The first one is communications management, the other one is stakeholder management. But before going in depth of both the knowledge areas, let's recap what we discussed yesterday. It was on resource management, and I would request Tanya again to recap for me. What did you learn yesterday?
Yeah, sure. It was just around how to, in the first instance, plan for what resources you needed, so physical and human resources, and how you would, the likes of, engage and or procure those resources. Went into specifics for exactly what you needed, what skill level, for instance, what amount of time you needed for people based on scope and work breakdown structure activities, as well as the physical resources for those. We talked about the project manager role being important to make sure that people's roles and responsibilities were very clear. And we talked quite a bit around their role in managing and leading the teams. So forming the teams and making sure that you were able to lead and coach them through to becoming high-performing teams. And we talked through a number of different leadership models. We talked about the RACI matrix for roles and responsibilities, and a bit about team building.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tanya. So, Tanya summarized the whole resource management knowledge area very well, and they were the key concepts we discussed last night. But 4 slides were left. These are the slides normally we use at the end of each knowledge area. And the first slide was like a revision of the key concepts that Tanya already did it. But let's go through these numbers, a few bullet points again to see that what project manager needs to do while planning for the resources. Myra, can you read these points for me one by one?
Sure. Factors to consider: team environment, geographical locations of team members, communications among stakeholders, organizational change management, internal and external politics, cultural issues and organizational uniqueness, other factors that may alter project performance.
So these are the factors when we are basically planning for our resources, managing our resources, and managing both project team and physical resources, including team environment. It should be a collaborative environment where there should be a good knowledge sharing among the team members. They should work as a unit so that they can become high-performing team. Similarly, our strategies around team management, around communications, highly depend on the geographical location of the team members. Team members could be co-located, they could be virtual, but if team members are virtual, then we have to basically improvise. We have to adopt our communication strategies in such a way that the virtual team's performance should be same like the performance of co-located teams. Though there come many different risks and challenges around virtual teams, but virtual teams have their own advantages too. Then communication among the stakeholder. Communication not only should be streamlined, but should be transparent among the stakeholders. Those stakeholders could be team, between the team members, and between the team and the external stakeholders. Organizational change management, it plays an important role when we are basically doing some internal projects, for example, transformation projects, so on and so forth. At that point of time, communications play a very, very important role, and change is something pretty tough. And we need to do a lot of different activities, a lot of development activities to bring change within the organization. Not only we have to do a good analysis of the requirements related to change, stakeholder requirements, organizational requirements, transition requirements, but also we need to assess the readiness of our stakeholders, readiness of our organization for the change. Internal and external politics, we should consider as a part of enterprise environmental factors while planning for the resources, cultural issues, and organizational uniqueness, because each organization is different from any other organization. Even within the same sector, organizations are different. Their cultures are different. Their organizational structure, their architectures, their technologies, their infrastructure, their governance and reporting structure, everything is different from each other. So these are few enterprise environmental factors we should consider when we are talking about resource management. But before that, there are two more points that are given at the top. The first part is the role of project manager in human resource management and leadership. In fact, when we started our discussion yesterday, our first 30 minutes were around the role of a project manager when he or she starts planning for the resource management, start acquiring the teams, develop the team, manage the team, and control the physical resources. We have seen a number of leadership theories or motivational theories that can help the project managers to convert the working group or the individuals into the high-performing team. Similarly, it is also very important that teams should be involved into planning, into decision making, because if team is involved into planning, for example, planning for the scope definition, work breakdown structure, or defining the activities, or making some decisions, including developing the team charter or ground rules, then team has a good buy-in on the project plan, and then they execute that plan with wholeheartedly with the motivation, because they develop that plan by themselves. So team role in planning and decision making is pretty important, and team must involve as early as possible in the planning stage. And then where we discussed about the team or human resources, we also talked about resource management, such as physical resource management. We talked about lean management, minimization of the waste, or just-in-time technique to reduce the inventory. And then we talked a bit about asset management. We talked about the suppliers, the relationship with the suppliers, and why they are important, and early planning for the physical resources is also important, so that we should have that lead time, that our equipment, our machinery, our tools should be available when they are required on the site for the team. So these were a few concepts we discussed yesterday. And there are some trends and emerging practices in resource management. And Myra, I would request you again just to go through them.
Collaborative and supportive management instead of command and control.
Again, collaborative and supportive management is just like a leadership, and command and control more like a management. So we always prefer leadership styles over the management things, over command and control, over micromanagement. Next.
Resource management methods. JIT, manufacturing, Kaizen, total productive maintenance, or TPM, theory of constraints, TOC.
So on and so forth. So we already know about JIT manufacturing, Kaizen, and then there is another technique called total productive maintenance, that is TPM, and the theory of constraints. We will not go in depth of them because they are not very important for the exam purposes, but if you want to go through these concepts, feel free to go. It's always good to learn about management concepts and resource management concepts. Just have a quick look on TOC, theory of constraints. Anybody know what is theory of constraints, and how can we basically use theory of constraints to improve the performance of either human resource or physical resources, for example, machinery?
Yeah, it's just a theory that's used to look at what factors or constraints you have in a process or set of processes, and look with the intention to try and reduce or eliminate those constraints, like a bottleneck in a manufacturing plant.
True. True. So it could be applied to our human resources. It could be applied to our manufacturing plants, as you just said. For example, if this is a system where basically this is a workflow where work is flowing from different components of the system, and we say that, okay, this is a bottleneck. Okay. Now, theory of constraints says that if this component is a bottleneck, then what we need to do? We need to look on its interfaces, both incoming and outgoing interfaces, and then we need to isolate this particular bottleneck. Okay, once it is isolated, then we need to see that how much work is there on this bottleneck. Now, after analysis of that work, okay, what we do, we remove all extra work that is not the key work, not the main thing this component need to do. Okay, and we basically share that extra work onto two other components, so that this bottleneck should be doing only that key work that is stopping the whole system, that is slowing the whole system. That's the first thing we do. Okay, remove all additional extra work from this component, or for example, this human resource, this team member, so that he or she can focus on the key things for which this role, this component is there in the organizational structure or in the system. But after that, once this change is made, we again check the whole system and see that if it is improved or not, if bottleneck is removed or not. If still it is not removed, the next step we do is we add more resources here on this component. And that resources could be again the team members, or they could be multiple machineries there. Instead of two machines, two printing machines, we might put three printing machines, so on and so forth. So after adding these extra resources, providing extra resources to this component, again we run the same thing, but we don't put extra load as we already removed it from this point, and then check again that if bottleneck is removed or not. So this is something related to theory of constraints, and it is pretty important theory. It helps a lot in reducing the bottlenecks and speeding up the system. We also talked about emotional intelligence, and we talked about 4 quadrants of emotional intelligence. This has become one of the niche skills for the project leaders or any type of leaders working in the organization, where they have a good understanding of themselves, the self-awareness. Once they have a good self-awareness, the next step is how to control their emotions, how to control their decisions, called self-control. Once this thing is done, the next step is understanding others, their beliefs, their mindset, why they make decisions in a particular way, what are their feelings, so on and so forth. Once you understand others, then you are able to use persuasive technique, skills or influencing skills, so that in a positive way, obviously, so that you can use others for a productive purpose as a project manager or a project leader. We also talked about self-organizing teams. In Agile, we focus that project managers or Scrum Master, whatever you call them, they create an environment, a collaborative environment, the environment that is not based on a fear that if someone will try something and if some mistake happens, that he or she should be penalized. No, a collaborative environment, a transparent environment, an open environment where basically the focus should be on reducing the bottlenecks and helping each other, so that teams become more and more self-organizing. The teams become more and more self-directed. They are going to make decisions by themselves. They are going to do planning by themselves. They have the authority, they have the responsibility. And if from the team, if there is some emergent leadership, still there should be an environment that should be fostered by Scrum Master or product owner or or project manager, so that that leadership, that young leadership could be emerged. And also virtual teams, distributed teams, this concept, this trend is coming very fast because of obvious reason. By doing that, we can get the best resource from all over the world. By having virtual teams, our cost reduces a lot. By having virtual teams, if required, we can basically do work not only for 8 hours, but maybe even for 16 hours or 24 hours, because 8 hours one team is working, 8 hours another team is working, 8 hours another team is working, so on and so forth. But virtual teams always come with the challenges, and we have to find the new innovative ways through which we can basically increase the collaboration, increase the better coordination and communication among the team members. Tailoring considerations, when we are tailoring our resource management related activities or processes, such as resource management planning or other processes, we should consider following factors in mind: diversity among the team members, team locations, industry-specific resources, acquisition of team members, team management, and the life cycle approach that we are using. This life cycle approach could be, again, hybrid, agile, or waterfall. Similarly, if we are working in agile or adaptive environment, following consideration we can make. And I would request Myra again just to continue studying for me. Reading for me.
Yep. Self-organizing teams with generalizing specialists.
Anybody know what does it mean, generalizing specialists?
Are they just like maybe subject matter experts that come in as and when requested?
Yep. So previously we used to use one term that was jack-all of all the trades. So jack-all of all the trade is someone who knows a little bit about everything, but he's not expert of anything. Okay, master of none, but jack-all of all the trades. But generalizing specialists is a bit different concept. It is like in previous 2 to 3 decades, the focus was on the subject matter experts. Okay, we normally call them I-shaped professionals. For example, network engineer, database administrator, developer, or engineer, or you can say draft person, depends on the organization. These people were called I-shaped professionals. They are expert of their domain. They know their domain very, very well, but they don't know anything else. Now, with the introduction of Agile, things change from I-shaped professional towards T-shaped professionals, where the team members should be expert in one domain, okay, but they should also have a good grip of some other domains. It helps us to reduce the bottlenecks. In case if a specialist move on, leave the job, quit the team, in that case, with little effort, the other team members can manage his or her work. This is called T-shaped professional. Someone, for example, who is business analyst should have a good understanding of testing. Not only a business analyst can gather the requirements, setting the acceptance criteria, but should be able to write the tests. Okay. Similarly, the role of business analysts shouldn't limited to only gathering the requirement or analyzing the requirement. It should be one step further. It should be more towards like designing the solution or at least supporting the design members, so on, so forth. They are called T-shaped professional. With little effort, with little training, they just hit the road and start running. In fact, a new concept has come that talk about M-shaped professionals who already have very good skills in more than one domain. So these generalizing specialists are basically these T-shaped professionals. Next.
Collaboration benefits include accelerated integration of distinct work activities, improved communication, knowledge sharing, flexibility of work assignments.
So because like in Agile, our focus is quite a lot on the people than on the processes, people and interactions instead of processes and tools. So there are some requirements from Agile that Agile highly recommends. For example, Scrum, one of the method of Agile says that, says that teams should be dedicated. They should be working 40 hours for your project. They should be co-located so that there should be a good collaboration among the team members. It helps us to basically to integrate the distinctive work activities, improve the communication because they are doing face-to-face communications. And face-to-face communications, as I mentioned in the last session, is the richest way of richest medium of communication where the learning that is achieved through face-to-face communication is not really possible through live streaming or through video or through audio or email. It also helps us to create an environment of collective knowledge, collective wisdom, where people learn from each other, develop their skills, their knowledge on top of each other's knowledge. Similarly, if team will be working in a collaborative environment, especially when iterations start, the work assignments are pretty flexible. Here, the meaning is, again, the generalizing specialists. It should not be the case if one person is not there, nobody else can do his or her work. So that was a brief discussion around resource management. Today we are going to start our next chapter, next knowledge area, that is communications management. And please note down this as this is not a communication management, but communications management, where we have to manage the communications within the team and within the with other stakeholders, because communications or effective communication is incredibly important part of any project. In fact, the project managers, as yourself, you can see that most of the time you do only one thing, that is communications, isn't it?
Yep, agree.
How much time you do communication with your team or other teams or other stakeholders as a part of your job?
60 to 70%.
Yeah, fantastic, Tanya. We do most of the time we do communication. In fact, this could increase up to 90% of the time where project manager is just communicating and ensuring that everybody has a same picture of the project. Everybody knows about his or her roles, well-defined roles, and stakeholders are well informed about what is happening on the project, so on and so forth. Communication requires planning, management, and monitoring of the communications or the messages. 3 processes. The first one is plan communication management, manage it, and monitor it. They are part of planning, executing, and monitoring and controlling process group. Now, one thing you can see that previously, most of the time we have seen control scope, control schedule, control quality, or control physical resources. However, this process is not controlled communications because communication cannot be controlled. The only thing a project manager can do is monitor communications, monitor the messages that are going to and from between the team members and with the external stakeholders. And based on that monitoring, based on that feedback, project manager improves the management of the communications. So firstly, we develop a plan for communications. Then by following the plan, we manage the communications and we monitor it, and we keep on improving our communication based on the feedback of our monitoring activities. Now, the first process, can anybody read for me, Pedro?
Yes, the plan communication management. This process considers how to develop plan for project communications activities.
Yeah, so again, any planning process, it talks about how to develop the plan for the project communication activities. Now, when we are planning, basically, we think about that what systems and processes are already available for the communications. What infrastructure is available? What communication technologies are available? What OPAs or organizational process assets are available that we can use to manage the communications on our project? And do we need to create any extra processes or documents that would be helpful for our project? That's what we think in plan communications. Similarly, whenever we plan communication, we always keep stakeholders in mind because communication is the need of the stakeholders. So their need we always analyze, and then based on that, we develop the communications plan. When a project manager does the communication, this is a figure that is showing the flow of the communications. That is downward communications. You can say that project manager always keep on using the shared lessons learned and the guidance from PMO, and also keep on archiving the lesson learned, what he or his team has learned, and keep on submitting the documents to the PMO. On the other side, in bilateral communication, he or she keep on talking with other portfolio program or project managers for, you can say that, for sharing the learnings. Similarly, the project manager also communicate with the customers, sponsors, business analysts, functional managers, team members, suppliers, and many other stakeholders. So this is just one flow. Yeah, but important thing to remember is this is to and from. It is bidirectional or interactive communications. We can divide the communications into 4 types. Very simple concept. Communications could be formal or informal. They could be written, they could be verbal. So based on that, we have 4 types. The first type is formal written communications. What do you think, guys? What are the examples of formal written communications? Example, yes.
For instance, a statement of works
Yeah,
that are signed by both the clients in the company.
yeah. And for a project, maybe our plans, project management plans or formal written communications, isn't it?
Yes.
What else?
Say for us, Vice, we use the change request
Yeah,
document.
yeah. Change requests
Yeah.
or CRs, you
Correct.
can say.
Mm.
What else?
All your reporting,
Yeah.
presentations.
Yeah. And again, if presentation is written, then you can say formal written. Otherwise, it will be formal verbal if it is like spoken.
Schedule management.
Yeah, the schedules.
Or yeah, schedules.
Yep. Similarly, work breakdown structures are in fact structure and many different project documents, assumption logs, issue logs, risk register, stakeholder registers, different type of messages that we use, and then many different graphics, charts, organizational chart, team chart, resource breakdown structures. Too many different things could be the examples of formal written. And as a project manager, it's our responsibility that formal written communications should be recorded, should be archived. And then there comes formal verbal. One example is already given by Tanya. That could be our presentations. What else?
Meetings.
Yeah, meetings.
Personal one-on-one talk
Yeah,
as well to like SMEs.
yeah, like interviews, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, interviews. So all these are different examples of formal verbal. They could be done face-to-face. They could be done remotely or through live streaming as we are doing. And then there comes informal written. What could be the example of informal written?
Teams or Skype messaging.
Yeah, Skype messaging.
Emails heavily.
Yes.
Heavily used.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So emails are an example of informal written. What else? Sometimes we use sticky notes or informal notes. I mean that we write on our diaries, and so on and so forth. So this is just an example of informal written communications and informal verbal communications.
Coffee catch up.
Yeah, coffee catch-ups, quick meetings, conversations in the corridor while making coffee, so on and so forth. Sometimes you might find some questions where they may give you a scenario where they may talk about, okay, if this thing is happening, for example, there is a like New Year dinner and project manager or a stakeholder start talking with the project manager about the project, about showing his or her concern. And then based on this type of scenario, they may ask one type of question or another type of questions. For that sake, you should have a good understanding that what type of communication is going on. When we talk about communications, we really want that communication should involve or should be based on 5 C's. These are the qualities of any communication: verbal, written, formal, informal, including. First C is correct grammar and spellings. The second C is concise and well crafted, clear and purposeful, coherent and logical, and controlled flow of words and ideas. So we can, in fact, when we talk about communications or business communications, I also learned about 7 C's instead of 5 C's. But again, the purpose of any communication should be, it should be well crafted, grammarly correct, clear and purposeful, and coherent and with controlled flow of words and ideas. Communication model. Communication model is very simple, nothing in it. On one end, you have sender. On the other end, you have receiver. Sender is the one who encodes the message through the channel. So any communication model consists of 3 components. Again, I'm repeating, one is sender, other is receiver, and they communicate with each other through a channel. This channel could be just face-to-face channel. This channel could be any telecommunication channel. It could be anything. Sender sends the message, or normally we call it encode the message. On the other side, receiver receives the message and decode it. And after that, through the same channel, receiver confirms that he received the message. Once receiver confirms that he received the message, sender may say, okay, I got your confirmation. So 3 steps. Sender send the communication, receiver confirm its receipt, and then sender confirm that he got the receipts. Channel, very important. Channel should be clear, but it could be noisy. So we should have a good understanding that the channel of communication between the sender and receiver should be appropriate. When we are doing the communications through any channel, it could be just face-to-face, it could be live streaming, it could be anything. We should focus on 2 things, non-verbal and verbal. Anybody who doesn't understand what are non-verbal factors and what are verbal things in a communication. So all good, yeah. So Tanya, it's a very simple concept. Non-verbal talks about your gestures, your facial expressions, your body language. And verbal on the other side is like the words, the phrases you speak or you send over the communication medium. However, your gestures, your facial expression and body language, they play very, very important role. In fact, in any communications, these factors are more important. Your non-verbal factors are much more important than your words or your phrases. 70% of the influence is from the non-verbal factors instead of words and phrases. So when you are doing the communications, if you are a receiver, you not only give attention to the words and phrases, but also you should understand the gesture or facial expression of the other person who is communicating with you. This is nothing but effective listening, where you not only focus on the verbal factors, but on non-verbal factors as well. Similarly, if you are a listener, then try to practice active listening. Who knows what is active listening? Active listening talk about that, where not only you give attention to the words and phrases. Not only attention to words and phrases, but also focus on the non-verbal factors, including gestures, facial expressions, tone and volume of the voice, but also the overall environment of the room. So you should have a very good understanding what is happening in the meeting, in the room. And also, you should practice active listening. That says that you can repeat what you heard from your boss or from your stakeholder for the sake of confirmation. Mean express your agreement or disagreement. Just repeat to see that, okay, what your stakeholder said, you understood. Excuse me, I'm sorry. You understood that thing very well. And if there is any clarification required, you should get that clarification, and you can have a good eye-to-eye contact with your stakeholder in the active listening. Also, when you are planning for the communication as a project manager, you should have a good understanding about the communication technologies, and also the communication technologies that are available within your organization. Maybe communication technology is just like a constraint for you, that you have to use Microsoft Teams. You really cannot use Zoom because we have already invested on Microsoft Teams, so on, so forth. So you should consider communications technologies available within your organization while planning for the communications with the stakeholder, and try to use them in an optimal way. Also, while you are doing the planning, you should assess, you should analyze your stakeholder needs. Do they need communication? Do they prefer communication face-to-face way or over the communication technology? Do they want the communications in a written way or in a verbal way? Do they like formal communications or informal communications? Is there any particular security and confidentiality related issues while communicating with the stakeholders, or they might have their own requirements around security and confidentiality? So you should keep all those things in mind. Also, the frequency of communication is very important to think about while you are planning for the communications. How often your stakeholders require the communications? Do they need monthly reports or weekly reports? How often they want the meetings? So on, so forth. Communications methods. PMI divides the communication method into 3 types. One is interactive communication. Again, this is a type of reciprocal communication where there are 2 persons and they are communicating with each other. Interactive communication. Another type of communication is called push communication. Push communication is nothing where basically you send the information to the stakeholders. That is like one-way communication, but you are the one who is sending that communications. For example, you are sending the newsletters, you are sending the emails, you are sending the status reports. All these type of communications are called push communications. On the other side, the pull communication that is our last type, where you put all the information on a central place. It could be your wiki, it could be your website. For example, COVID-19. To manage this project, obviously it's a big project and we really don't know its end. They develop the whole website where people can go and get the latest information. Similarly, when the projects are pretty big, huge, national level projects, then normally they develop the websites for those projects, and the stakeholders can always go and get the updated information from that central location. Similarly, you may establish an intranet for your team members and stakeholders for your project, a SharePoint where they can go and pull the information. Meetings are very, very important way of communication. So as a project manager, you should have a good understanding of running effective meetings. When we talk about running effective meetings, basically we divide meeting management into three parts. The first one is pre-meeting best practices. Second part is during meeting best practices, and then third part is post-meeting best practices. Now guys, everybody does the meeting. You all are like senior project manager. You have good experience of it. What do you think? What are the best practices, best pre-meeting practices? What should you do as a project manager before meetings?
Make sure you're prepared.
Yeah, should be prepared for the meeting, no doubt. What else?
Provide the agenda for the meeting.
Yeah, agenda for the meeting. What else? Pedro.
Usually, you also try to assess also who are the people in the meeting.
True, very important. Who will be attending the meeting? The stakeholders. If you are a project manager, normally this thing is under your control to choose the right stakeholders for your meetings. So selection of right stakeholders. Yeah, what else?
Make sure that you've got a time and a place organized.
Yeah, very good. So place must be, for example, meeting rooms. If there are many different project teams and they are doing their own meetings, so sometimes the time you set, at that time the meeting room is not available. So you should ensure that all the facilities, the meeting room or any other facility that is required for the meeting should be available. So these are few best practices that you can think about before conducting or before even thinking about planning for the meeting. And then during meetings, what could be the best practices?
Depending what sort of meeting, you might set some ground rules.
Yeah, so ground rules always play important role. In fact, many project managers are in agile environment. Ground rules are already there in the meeting rooms in clear words, maybe with the help of some big posters where they show that, okay, these are the ground rules for our meetings. So these should be set, and you can set it while you are setting your team ground rules. What else? Following the ground rules? Yeah.
Regular routine meeting.
Yeah. So regular routine meeting, no doubt. But now meeting is started. What are the best practices?
Yeah, keep your time.
Yeah, keep the time. So we should stick with the time. We should stick with the agenda. We should stick with the purpose of the meeting. We should ensure that nobody is hijacking the meeting. Only one person is just keep on talking and all other are just sitting down. So we really don't want our meeting should be hijacked. Similarly, we should take care of cultural sensitivity. We should not see that someone is mocking someone else because of his culture or because of some other reasons. It shouldn't be allowed. You should facilitate the meeting well. You should take the notes of the meetings, or maybe with the help of meeting coordinator, you can get the notes of the meetings. Those notes could be written, could be audio, could be video. Okay, you should effectively use the communication technology, especially if there are some virtual team members. And also, you should check the health of your meeting. The people who are participating, are participating like proactively or actively? They are present in the meetings, or they are feeling themselves as a prisoners, that okay, why he called me for the meeting, I have nothing to do here, so on and so forth. So all these things are, you should note down, or you should practice during the meetings. And then there comes post meetings. What could be the best practices?
Review the outcome of the meeting.
Yeah. Review the outcomes of the meeting. Minutes of meeting that you took should be distributed to the team members. If someone add a point into the minutes of the meeting, everybody else should be informed too. And then action points in the meetings that decided should be sent to the relevant responsible persons. So these rules are also given here, but we already discussed them. Communication requirements analysis, this is nothing but when you are planning for the communications, you firstly get the requirements from your stakeholders related to communications. What are their needs? And you can do it by reviewing the stakeholder register, stakeholder engagement plan, location of the stakeholders, and the number of communication channels. And when we say communication channel, basically this concept is, if there are two persons in a team, then communication channel between them will be only one. However, if there are three members in a team, the communication channel between them would be three. Mean between person 1 and 2, between person 1 and 3, and between person 2 and 3. In fact, we can determine the communication channel with the help of this formula. N is the number of stakeholders, and this formula can help us to find the number of communication channel. Why they are important? Because as number of stakeholders include, the communication become more and more complicated. Its management become more and more complex. And we should have some idea about how many channels would be there among the stakeholders.
Can I just ask a question on that?
Yeah.
Just a question. So to what level of stakeholder do you apply that equation to? So if you've got an organisation and there's 100 people that need to just be informed about information, is that one stakeholder group, or is it 100 stakeholders?
Yeah, that's one. That's very important. So stakeholder definition plays an important role here. Stakeholder could be stakeholder could be just an individual, or could be group of individuals, or could be the whole community. In that case, you will normally consider them one stakeholder. Those group of stakeholders would be just one stakeholder. For example, you can say that, okay, if you talk about any academic institutes, then one cohort of students would be just one stakeholders.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, here one example is given. Can you please tell me, if there are 4 people, how many communication channels will be there between them?
Is that 6?
Yes. Excuse me. So 6 communication channels, and you can see those communication channels here. Output of plan communication is nothing but communication management plan. That is a subsidiary plan for our project management plan, and it talks about what information, what messages needs to be communicated, why they need to be communicated, between whom, what is the best method of communication, and who is person responsible for a particular type of communication, and what should be the frequency of communication. Some components, there could be more components. Again, your communication management plan is always tailored according to your need. Managed communication is during execution by following your communication plan. Here, what you do is that you ensure that the information, the messages are flowing back and forth. Stakeholder communication needs are met. They are receiving all the artifacts that were initially planned. For example, reports, graphics, emails, meetings, or any other type of communication. And if there is some formal written communications in your project, that again could be reports, could be plans, could be scheduled, they should be recorded and archived. Also, when you are managing communication, you always think about the communication blockers. Communication blockers could be different, depend on the communication channel. It could be noisy surrounding. You really don't want to have meeting in a noisy environment, and you really don't want to use a technology where there is a more noise on the channel, so on, so forth. Similarly, the distance plays a very important role. Improper encoding of messages by the sender. Sender must ensure that messages are properly encoded. Language plays very important role. Language, the accent, all those things, and plays important role in the communication, and it could be communication blocker. Culture, it also plays very important role. Sometimes communication really doesn't work because of the cultural differences. You might give me an example if you want.
Yep. So I had a Pacific Island team member.
Yeah.
Who it's very difficult for them to speak up just because they were unaccustomed to 2 things. I guess one was having a woman lead, and the other was just that respectful nature of hierarchy.
Yeah. So so this type of cultural differences can be communication blockers. As a project manager, we should think about them. While we are managing communication, our interpersonal skills play very important role. They help us to reduce the communication barriers, communication blockers, resolve the conflicts, and promote effective communications. While we are managing communication, as we mentioned earlier, that we are ensuring that the information is going back and forth. All the reports are being submitted to the right stakeholders. But here it's important that we should know different type of reports that might be part of your project. There could be more than that, but some examples are shown here. The reports could be status reports, progress report, trend reports, forecasting, variance reports, earned value reports, and lesson learned reports. Any confusion, what could be the part of these reports?
That status and progress.
Yeah, so it could be, normally the progress report talk about your past progress. That could be monthly or weekly progress. Status is normally the status of your work, your project status. In fact, you can think of that is linked with your past performance. This is your current performance. Trend report or forecasting report could be about your future, and variance is the difference between the planned and the actual. Earned value report, we have already studied about earned value analysis. The report related to it, how many deliverables are completed 100%, how many deliverables are in progress, how many deliverables will be completed later, how much money is spent, how much time is passed, how much budget is left, how much contingency reserve is left, are we on track, or we are behind the schedule, or we are over budgeted, so on, so forth, are part of earned value reports. On the other hand, lesson learned documentation or retrospectives are basically our self-assessments for the sake of improvement. Monitor communications goes hand in hand with the managed communication. When we are ensuring communication is going on, we are also assessing that if communication is going properly or not. We also measure that if our communication management is communication management plan is being followed or not, and if the communication we are currently doing meet the stakeholder needs or not. If not, let's improve it. So that was end of communications. Very simple chapter, not very complicated concepts, but you might find a number of questions that will involve the communications, that will involve the stakeholders. Maybe I mentioned previously or not, when I gave my PMP exam, at that time, what I found, out of 200 questions, around 150 questions were around stakeholders and communication with them. So you might find the word stakeholder in almost every second question. Okay, before finishing this chapter, let's quickly review the key concepts. Grace, can you please help me to read?
Communication is exchange of information.
We understand this thing. It is nothing but exchange of information or the messages.
Internal and external.
So these are type of communication within the team and with the external stakeholders.
Written and spoken.
Yep.
Formal or informal. Gestures and choice of words. Medium, communication activities or artifacts. And hierarchical focus.
Maybe spellings are wrong, but I'm not sure, but hierarchical focus. That is basically talking about upward and downward communications. When we are doing downward communication, basically the topic of our communications, topic of our information exchange, or type of our information exchange is different than we are doing upward communications with our sponsors, with our CEOs, with our executive bodies. Trends and emerging practices. Grace, can you please keep on reading?
Inclusion of stakeholders in project reviews. Inclusion of, sorry.
Yep, please carry on.
Inclusion of stakeholders in project meetings. Increased use of social computing. Multifaceted approach.
All these trends and emerging practices came from the Agile. Like the first one, project reviews. Now we really don't submit our project deliverables at the end. House is ready, come and inspect it. No. Nowadays things are changed, especially in the Agile world, or the projects that are run based on Agile, where deliverables are produced after each 2 weeks or 1 week, and the stakeholders review the deliverable at the end of each iteration. Much more frequent, much more often. By doing that, they are able to either accept or reject the deliverables. They are able to provide the feedback, and also they are able to give their further requirements based on those reviews. Similarly, stakeholders could be included, the external stakeholders like client, in project meetings, but most of the time they are asked to be just observers in those meetings. Similarly, use of social computing, everybody knows, has increased quite a lot in everything, in not only marketing, but in everything, in the communications. Nowadays, even myself, I have my own teams that are just on WhatsApp, and we communicate on WhatsApp because most of my team members, they use WhatsApp more often than maybe their emails. Similarly, project managers now are using multi-faceted approach, and they are not just using one type of approach, but multiple approaches to improve the communication among the team members. For example, if there are virtual teams, communication is not only over live streaming or face-to-face, live streaming or over Zoom, but the project managers, they also try that those virtual teams, at least for some time, come together and work face-to-face as well, so that communication, the collaboration, the cultural awareness, and the understanding of each other should increase. If a team could be brought together in the start of a project, things totally change. People start having the relationships with each other. They start feeling easy to communicate with each other. And after that, after 2 weeks or after 2 iterations or 4 weeks, the team can go back to their own country and they can keep on working virtually. But now their communication would be much more improved. Training considerations when you are developing your communications plan, you should think about stakeholders, their physical location, the available communication technology, the language, and the need of knowledge management. Consideration for agile and adaptive environment. Eamon, can you please read for me?
Frequent and quick communication through reviews, stand-up meeting.
Yeah. So communication is much more often and quick in agile environment. We have like that communications daily with the help of daily stand-ups at the end of each iteration. That could be product reviews, that could be retrospectives. Next.
Communication and osmotic communication.
Co-location, as I said previously, that Agile really highly recommends co-location of the team members, dedicated team members, but co-located. In fact, now the concept has come of commons and caves. Previously, like everybody has their own desks and own cabins. Now we have more open office environments where team members are sitting while facing to each other. This is called commons. However, if team members need some privacy, in offices there are some cabins available. We call them caves, where they can go and do some research or can do the phone call, so on and so forth. So this is the concept of co-location, and it helps in osmotic communication. Anybody, what does it mean, osmotic communication? Any comment? Yes, Tanya?
That's right.
Just the flow of information backward and forward or in between members.
Yes, it is a type of interactive communication, but osmotic communication is something, even you are not communicating with your colleagues, but still you are learning from their talks, from their communication, because you are sitting in the same room. For example, if they are discussing a particular problem and they are talking about the solution, you will also get awareness about that solution. That is like more like a osmotic communication. Yes, Grace.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say like a sort of accidental
Yes.
learning of information.
True. True. So that is one example of osmotic communications. And visibility and transparency. The work the team does is very visible, is very transparent. Again, the purpose is not to keep an eye what people are doing. The purpose is to remove the bottlenecks. If a team member is stuck somewhere, as work in progress is very visible, very transparent with the help of, for example, information radiators that are there, that are hanged in the commons, where everybody can see that what is the product backlog, who is working on what, and they can clearly see that, okay, the team members are working on one task, another one is working on another task. If someone is working on the same task for maybe more than 2 or 3 days, they can talk with each other to see that what's the problem. If you're stuck somewhere, do you need any type of help, so on, so forth. So information is very visible, very transparent, but it needs a lot of courage to put your work on the information radiator where everybody can see that what you are doing. But again, for this, the environment of trust is very important. That was end of communication management. Any question?
No.
All good, thanks.
Okay, guys. So just allow me to go to next chapter. That is our chapter 13. That is last chapter, but we are covering early because it is not only short, but also linked with the communication management. And this is stakeholder management. When we talk about stakeholder management, we talked about 4 different processes or 4 different activities. The first activity is identify stakeholders. It requires you as a project manager to identify as many stakeholders as early possible and then analyze their power, their interest and level of engagement, elicit their requirements and expectations so that you can put those requirements and expectations into your communications plan, in your stakeholder management plan, and also in product and project scope. Requirements will go to scope, whereas their expectations, their engagement requirements, they will go to into stakeholder engagement plan or communications management plan. And then based on this identification and analysis of the stakeholder, we plan for stakeholder management. We think how to manage our stakeholders. Once plan is developed, it becomes a part of project management plan and we follow it during execution so that we can manage our stakeholders' engagement. Where execution is going on, we also keep on monitoring stakeholder engagement. We really cannot control stakeholder engagement. We just monitor them and see that if stakeholders engagement is going well, what is current level of stakeholders engagement? Is it if stakeholders are against us, are they neutral, or they are supportive, or they are advocate for our project? We really want our stakeholders to be supportive of our projects. Few important bits about stakeholders. Let's go through them one by one. Sukanya, are you around? So Sukanya is not here. Myra, can you please help me to read?
What should you do with stakeholders throughout the project? Identify all of them, determine their requirements, determine their expectations, determine their interest, determine their level of influence and authority, plan to engage stakeholders, plan how you will communicate with them, manage their expectations, influence, and engagement, communicate with them, monitor communications and stakeholder engagement.
This part, this is our process one, identify stakeholders. Identify all of them, identify them as early as possible. You can do it by yourself. You can get help from your team. You can get help from your sponsors, from your clients. You can do the research. You can use a variety of tools and techniques, document analysis, organizational reviews, looking on the lesson learned, conducting interviews with your sponsor to find other stakeholders, or interview the key stakeholders to identify all the stakeholders. You can also conduct some interviews and questionnaires for the sake of stakeholder identification. Once they are identified, you keep record of them, okay, in the stakeholder register. Also, then you do some analysis activities. This is called stakeholder analysis. You analyze their requirements, get those requirements, put them in the scope. You analyze their expectations and make a strategy to manage their expectations, meet their expectations, look on their interest in the project, look on their power in the organization or influence on the project, and their authority in the organization. Once that work is done, you have a good understanding of your stakeholders. You identified all of them, you analyze their needs well. Now you can do a good plan. And that plan would be obviously about stakeholder engagement and fulfilling their communication needs. Once a plan is established, the next two steps are manage the stakeholder engagement, manage their expectations, influence and engagement, and communicate with them, fulfill their communication needs, and also keep an eye on effectiveness of the communication and stakeholder engagement. You really don't want a stakeholder who was supportive of project now went against your project, or a community who was supportive of your project went against your project. You really don't want it. And you do this work when you are doing the this bit, this process, the last process, monitoring stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder identification, if you will not identify them early, then later if a stakeholder, a group of stakeholders are found, then what would happen? They will, and there are chances that they may ask for change requests. If change requests will come late in the project, they will be much more expensive as compared to change requests early in the project. You can identify the stakeholders, as I just mentioned, with the help of questionnaires and surveys, by conducting the interviews with the key stakeholders, as a team, sitting down, brainstorming, listing down all the stakeholders, brainwriting, that is nothing but quiet writing. It's a type of brainstorming where instead of just writing the ideas in a round robin fashion or free for all sessions, you take 5 minutes, list down all the stakeholders, and after that the facilitator of the meeting write down all those stakeholders on the whiteboard. You know different type of brainstorming, isn't it? We discussed about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then once stakeholders are identified, the next step is analyze the stakeholders. What are their roles, responsibilities, their power, their interest, their influence on the project? What are their stakes in the project? And you may think about the factors such as ownership, the knowledge, rights, interests, and contribution. Tools and techniques, further tools and techniques that could be used. Document analysis, that could be analysis of your OBS, organizational breakdown structure, or organizational chart, to find out different stakeholders or different departments who could be stakeholders of your project. Similarly, you can go through the lesson learn to see that who are the stakeholders on the similar project, previous similar project. Also, when you are doing the analysis of the stakeholders, you can use many different techniques. We call them stakeholder mapping techniques. They are, could be power interest grid, could be stakeholder cube, could be salience model. When we say, for example, power interest grid, it is nothing but it's a quadrant. On one side you can put power, on the other side you can put interest. So in other words, here in this quadrant you will have stakeholders who has less power, less interest. Here the stakeholders would be with what? Anyone?
Low power, high interest.
Yeah, low power, high interest. Very simple, isn't it? And then here, high power,
low interest.
And here, high power, high interest. Now you identified all the stakeholders. Now you are going to group them based on their power and interest, or their influence and interest. Okay. Now, what should you do with the people with low power and low interest with your project, with the stakeholders?
Put them at the bottom of priority.
Fully agreed. And keep monitoring them, isn't it? They will be normally low in priority, and you just keep on monitoring them because their interest level may change later. And you might have to shift them into this quadrant, because in this quadrant where the people who got less power but high interest, you treat them differently. And what do you think? How should they be treated?
Consulted with, or
Yeah,
informed and potentially consulted.
Yeah, so most importantly, they must be informed. You might not consult them, but you must inform them. Keep them informed. And the people who got high power but low interest, how to treat with these type of people are stakeholders.
That's consulting.
Yeah, but they have low interest.
Monitor them.
Yeah. Monitoring would be enough, or like, do we need to do something better?
Should also be informed.
Yeah, but I think we need to do a bit better than that. And that is basically keep them satisfied. If they have any particular need, just fulfill that need and keep them satisfied. And then there comes the stakeholders who got high power but also high interest. Then what should we do with these type of stakeholders, such as our sponsor? Yeah, consult and in fact closely engage this group of stakeholders. It is shown in this in this graph or in this figure. Monitor, low in priority, so requires minimum effort. The people who are very much interested and always come to you to know about the status of your project, keep them informed. High power people, but low interest, keep them satisfied. If they need anything, just provide them. Otherwise, really don't touch them. And the people who got high power and high interest, manage them closely. Then there comes our next technique, that is stakeholder cube. It includes 3 bits: power, attitude, interest. High or low power, positive or negative attitude, high or low interest. For example, this type of stakeholders which got negative attitude and low interest, they are just like a tripwire. Similarly, the people who got high interest but negative attitude, they are irritant. Similarly, let's take the example of this guy because it's given here. Sleeping giant. This guy has a positive attitude, high power, but interest is low. To treat these type of people, Myra, can you please read how to treat sleeping giants?
Make sure they know what's in it for them, awaken their interest, and get their input and support.
Yeah, because they have high power, they have positive attitude. They can help to take your project for a successful completion. So what can you do? You can ensure that, or you can let them know that what is in this project for them, so that their interest level should increase and they may help you out. And then our next model, that is called salience model, and it is based on 3 factors: power, legitimacy, and the urgency. The stakeholders who got the urgency, they could be put like as a demanding stakeholders who got like power but no urgency or legitimacy. They are dormant stakeholders, and the stakeholders which has like legitimacy but no power or urgency, they are discretionary stakeholders. And then you can see that there are some common areas where there is urgency and legitimacy but no power at all. They are dependent stakeholders, and there are stakeholders who got good power and they have urgency as well but no legitimacy. You must be afraid of these stakeholders. They are pretty dangerous. They can do anything because they have urgency, they have power too, but they don't have any legitimacy. And then there comes those stakeholders who got power and legitimacy but no urgency. They are again dominant stakeholders. They can do whatever they want, but normally they don't have a lot of urgency. And then there comes some stakeholders who got power, legitimacy, and urgency. These are your definitive stakeholders. They are your most important stakeholders. You need to closely manage them. These are just 3 mapping techniques. There could be more than that. For example, onion method that put your stakeholder into different onion layers, including definitive stakeholders here, then the stakeholders to whom you are working but not directly involved, and then some you can say users of the product, and then some external stakeholders. You can also express stakeholders in the layers of an onion. Different techniques, you can use it. Output of identify stakeholder is a living document called stakeholder register. Initially, when you identify the stakeholder, you may just have the name, title, contact information, major requirements, main expectations, roles and responsibilities, and their analysis, how much influence, power, or interest they have, and their classification. Remember, guys, stakeholder register may contain more fields here. Okay, and those fields might come when you plan for the stakeholders, their communication needs, their expectations, and when you manage the stakeholders and monitor the stakeholders, then there could be more fields in stakeholder register, because it is nothing but a living document, and initial version is created at the time of stakeholder identification. Outputs of stakeholder identification could be change requests into your plans, some updates in the plans, like in the communication management plan or procurement management plan or risk management plan. There could be some updates in the project documents, such as assumption log, issue log, or risk register. Once you complete your identification, the next identification and analysis. The next step is planning for the stakeholder engagement. This planning take care of that how project will impact the stakeholders, how team will interact with the stakeholders, and will the stakeholders involved in decision making or not? If yes, how they will be involved, how you will manage their expectations, their requirements, their interest level, their influence level, so on, so forth. Stakeholder engagement planning could be done with the help of stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. This assessment matrix is nothing but, if I go to previous slide, this is that matrix: influence, power, and interest. Let me go back to those slides. Assumptions and constraints and root cause analysis. This type of analysis could be used for the purpose of finding that what is current level of engagement with the stakeholders. Are they engaged the project, neutral, or supportive of the project? Once stakeholder engagement plan is developed, it is part of project management plan. It contains the information related to the existing and desired level of engagement, and the strategies to bring the existing level of engagement to desired level of engagement. It also talks about how stakeholders will be involved in the project, because we already did a good analysis. We already know that what type of stakeholders are they. So our strategy should talk about that, how they will be involved on the project. Are we going to monitor them, or going to keep them satisfied, or keep them informed? What we are going to do with these type of stakeholders? What type of communications need to be done with them? What documents can be shared with them? What cannot be shared with them? Then once plan is developed, the next step is nothing but manage our stakeholder engagement. Very simple, but on the other hand, it is very complicated too. So follow your plan and keep on managing the stakeholder engagement, stakeholder expectations. Continuously doing the self-assessment, project assessment, to ensure that stakeholder engagement is done properly. And for this purpose, communication is very critical. Then there comes the last process of our lost knowledge area, that is monitor stakeholder engagement. It talks about evaluation of stakeholder engagement, comparing the comparing our performance with the plan, improving our strategies to engage the stakeholders, so on, so forth. And that was end of this chapter. very short chapter, but before finishing, let's quickly go through the key concepts so that we should have an idea that we learned enough. Tanya, can you please help me to read through the key concepts?
Sure. Stakeholders impact, positive or negative, and influence limited or significant.
So their impact could be positive or negative, and their influence could be limited or significant. And our strategies should reflect that we have taken care of both the factors. Next.
Identification, prioritization, and engagement of stakeholders early in the project.
So you have already seen that how can we identify what tools and techniques could be used, how can we prioritize the stakeholders, but we should do this thing as early as possible. In fact, if you remember the process group initiating, there were two processes in the initiating. One was develop project charter and the second was
Identify stakeholders.
Stakeholders. So that's why we put to stakeholder identification in the initiation phase. Next.
Stakeholders, communication, and satisfaction.
Yeah, so we should fulfill their communication need. We should fulfill their requirements, their expectations as per our plan. Yeah.
Stakeholder management should be done when a project phase is started, new stakeholders are involved, significant changes in the organisation or the wider stakeholder community.
So here, just one point. There are total 49 processes. These 49 processes, few of them are done once in the whole life cycle. Few of them are done iteratively throughout the project life cycle. There are some processes which are done on some predefined points over a life cycle of a project. So this process, that is stakeholder management processes, especially the identification of the stakeholders, they are done when project starts or a new phase of a project start, or if new stakeholders are identified or involved, or there is a significant change within the organization or with the wider stakeholder community. Trends and emerging practices. Yeah.
Broader definitions of stakeholders are developed.
Yeah, so I mean, such as like wider community, we have already defined our stakeholders, a very thorough and formal definition. Stakeholders are those individuals, group of individuals, or the organizations who can impact, could be impacted, or perceive themselves to be impacted by project activities, project decisions, and project deliverables. So this definition is a thorough definition that can help us to identify a wider set of stakeholders. Next.
Identifying all stakeholders, not just a limited set.
It's pretty important that we should try our best to identify as many stakeholders as possible.
Team involvement in stakeholder engagement.
Team can really help in engaging the stakeholder, because sometimes we might really don't know how to engage one particular type of stakeholder. Maybe our team members can suggest something through which we can engage our stakeholders in a more effective way. Maybe they are they both go to the same gym, or they both have the same interests, like in golf or in playing bowling or something like that. So through that channel, we can engage our stakeholders more effectively.
Revise stakeholder community while catering individual needs.
Yeah. So this is like integrated risk management. When we are getting the risks, we should always think about their impact on the stakeholder community. And then there comes next point.
Sorry, co-creation.
Yes. What is co-creation, guys? What do you think? Co-creation is basically when all the stakeholders, including team, including the clients, they sit together and they co-create the overall vision of the product, overall vision of the project. They work together to decide that what are the objectives of starting a particular project. Instead of the team who think what should be the deliverables, the vision, the elevator statement of the product, they are normally produced together, both the client or customer and the project team.
Capturing the value of effective stakeholder engagement.
So not only effective stakeholder engagement is important, but capturing the value. You already created the value out of your efforts of stakeholder engagement, but capturing the value is also important because then you get real benefit and can make your project successful. Next.
Considerations for tailoring include stakeholder diversity, complexity of stakeholder relationships, and communication technology.
So these factors you should think about when you are tailoring your stakeholder engagement approach. How diverse are your stakeholders? Especially in New Zealand, like bicultural partnership, or nowadays, like many cities have become like multicultural. So diversity has increased. Now you have to think in more broader terms when engaging the stakeholders, and also the complexity of the relationship between the stakeholders, between the communities, so on and so forth. And then communication technology is always there to consider while tailoring the stakeholder engagement. And then there comes the last point, and I would request Eamon to help me to read through it.
Aggressive.
Yep. Consideration for?
Yeah, concentration for agile adaptive environments. Direct engagement between teams and stakeholders.
Yeah, in fact, Agile recommends that team and the clients, they must work together as a team. That's why this role of product owner is created. That is nothing but voice of a customer, that is representative of the business team or the customer team, and this product owner always work with the development team together on a project. The project is actually product owner's project. Next.
Engagement in dynamic and co-creative manner.
So dynamic mean product owner, that is client, and the team, they are working together day in, day out. They are working on the product backlog together. They are working on the user stories together in a dynamic fashion, in a co-creative fashion.
Migrate risk, build trust, and support adjustment.
So support adjustment is like all the changes, what is required from the client should be catered for, and there should be a relationship of trust between the team and the customers. And this could be done through frequent verification, frequent validations, and through working together. And it also helps us to mitigate the risks. In fact, Agile says that in waterfall method, the risks are reduced over the period of time. Whereas in Agile, the risks are focused. We try to reduce our risks as early as possible, and the critical risks are reduced early in the project. They may result in the failure, but it's all right. Fast failure is acceptable to us. Okay, if we fail fast, at least we will not waste our resources. We will not waste our time. So proposition for risk mitigation in Agile is something like that. That shows that risks which are on the x-axis, on the y-axis, they reduce much earlier as compared to waterfall technique. And then
aggressive transparency, frequent reviews, and visibility, information radiator.
so aggressive transparency is kept through frequent reviews, and visibility is made by putting your work as a team, as a product owner or a scrum master on the information radiators, on the boards such as Kanban boards, where everybody can see that what is going on. But again, it requires mutual trust among the stakeholders. So this was end of today's session. Before finishing, if you have any question, just feel free to ask.